A horse called Holiday. Love has no limits to the wonder it performs. The moment Middle sees Holiday, a beautiful chestnut thoroughbred, she knows he's the horse she's been waiting for. A horse she can take to the horse show. A horse who can win a blue ribbon. But then Middle discovers the terrible truth about Holiday. He's deaf and very, very scared. Middle's always taken the easy way out, but this time that won't work. She loves Holiday, but will that love be enough? So, a horse called Holiday. Can this horse make Middle's dreams come true? Chapter 1. Middle, the Caboose. The voice on the loudspeaker carried clearly over the brightly painted red, white, and blue jumps in the ring, over the crowded grandstands, over the parking lots with their rows and rows of cars. Sunlight gleamed softly on the velvet hunt caps and polished boots of the young riders in the arena as they sat on their braided horses, motionless, waiting, expectant. The winner of the Idlewood Junior Jumping Championship is. In the pause that followed, even the horses seemed to be listening. Meredith Scott on Bugle Boy. Middle's heart bounced back into place and started beating again. At the roar of applause, she smiled and picked up Bugle Boy's reins. She tried to look nonchalant as she rode toward the group of officials. How much she had wanted this. How proud her family would be. Proud of me, Middle Scott, she told herself, winner of the Idlewood Junior Jumping Championship. She glanced at the faces of the riding club kids down the line. She saw envy and disappointment, and a few showing admiration. She had beaten them all, even Tyler Benning. Tyler tossed her head and looked away as Middle rode past. In the center, a man held a streamer of multicolored ribbons and an enormous silver bowl. Ornately engraved, it glittered in the sun. Far away in the parking lot, someone was honking a horn. That bowl is huge, thought Middle. Bigger than all of Laurie's tennis trophies put together. I wonder what Mom and Dad will say. Congratulations, Meredith, said the man holding the silver bowl. He was bald, with a fringe of white hair circling his pink dome. Middle knew he was the president of the Idlewood Club. Middle halted her big bay horse, and the president looked up at her. You must be the youngest rider ever to win the junior championship, he exclaimed. I'm 12, Middle said. I'm in 7th grade. The president smiled broadly. May I call you Middle? He asked. I've heard that's your nickname. He held up the bowl with two hands so Middle could put one hand on it and pose. The honking horn grew more insistent. Smile, said the president. The photographer aimed his camera, and another man waved a crumpled sheet of white paper to make Bugle Boy prick his ears. Middle smiled. Meredith Scott, what in the world are you doing? Shouted her sister's voice. Middle blinked. She wasn't at the Idlewood Horse Show. She was sitting on Mrs. Jamieson's Palomino mare, Peaches, in Mrs. Jamieson's backyard, wearing blue jeans and a white t-shirt that read, Lord, give me patience right now. Some posts and rail jumps needing paint were lined up near the fence. Middle looked around. Her sister Laurie had parked behind the barn and was leaning out of the car window. We're sitting there like we're having your picture taken, and we're smiling. Just smiling, said Laurie. While I was honking and yelling my head off. Oh, said Middle. I was thinking of something. Well, I guess, Laurie made a face. You were supposed to clean the patio this morning, remember? You rushed off without thinking as usual. Oh, said Middle again. I'm sorry. It seemed to her she spent most of her life saying she was sorry. Laurie sighed. Well, go on home and clean it up before you do anything else. Before I pick Mom up from work. She was really mad this morning. Okay, I'm almost through. Middle shifted the reins and the horse pricked her ears. Do you want to watch me? No, I've got. Oh well, I guess so. Middle trotted the palomino around the big yard, turned, and cantered toward the line of fences. The mare jumped smoothly over the first three, picked up speed, flew over the fourth fence, and bolted. She's getting better, yelled Middle, hauling on the reins. She used to bolt after the first fence. I remember. Laurie watched in silence until Middle circled the horse. I don't know why you keep riding her. I get paid, said Middle. I'm going to buy my own horse. Besides, I want to enter Peaches in the Idlewood show, and I'm going to win too. Middle trotted up to the fence in time to hear Laurie mutter, Oh, geez, Miss Show Off again. Middle frowned. I will win. If I can't win this year, I'll win next year. Laurie rolled her eyes. Okay, Caboose, just don't forget the patio. The car backed down the drive. Caboose, that did it. Middle groaned and began to trot the horse briskly around the yard. She hated being called Caboose. She hated being reminded that she was born nearly 6 years after the others. There were Keith and Karen and Laurie close together, and then 6 years later, Middle. The little surprise, her mother always said, smiling, but Middle noticed nobody else smiled. Laurie called her the Caboose, the end of the train after all the important cars. The tail end of the family, she muttered. I'm not the little surprise. I'm the big mistake. It's not my fault I came along when I did. The horse trotted faster. And everybody thinks Laurie's so great because she wins trophies in her dumb old tennis tournaments. Well, someday I'll win more trophies in jumping classes than Laurie has ever won. Middle's voice trembled. Then they'll be glad I'm in the family. The horse tossed her head and broke into a canter. And Mom will say, Why, Middle, we didn't know you could ride like that. We're awfully proud of you. Peaches suddenly jerked the reins and tried to bolt. Middle sank into the saddle and concentrated on the horse. They slowed to a trot. I'm sorry, Middle said, stroking the mare's neck gently. They'll see, she told Peaches. Mom keeps telling me I don't have to win anything, but how else can I make them proud of me like they are Laurie? The arena blurred. I'll show them. I will do something special. The most special thing she knew was the Idlewood Junior Jumping Championship. But how could she enter when she didn't even have a horse? She just hoped Peaches would be good enough by then. Middle sighed deeply and draped herself over Peaches, one arm dangling on either side of the horse's neck. The mare's coat was golden, like sliced peaches. Her mane and tail, the color of cream, poured over them. Middle buried her face in the flaxen mane and took a deep breath. The mane smelled faintly of shampoo and clean horse, and Middle was partly comforted. The sound of a car on the driveway made her sit up. It was Laurie again. She put her head out the window. I almost forgot. Mrs. Bailey called. She wants you to come over early. She has something to show you. Middle wiped her face quickly on one arm and galloped up to the fence. What does she want to show me? Why didn't you tell me? I don't know what it is, and I am telling you, Laurie sighed. But you've got to clean the patio before you go there. For once, don't be a pain. She drove away again. Middle stared after the car. You're not my mother, she said loudly. I'll go to Mrs. Bailey's first if I want to. She began walking the horse slowly around the arena to cool her off. Mrs. Bailey was the only grown-up Middle knew who understood Middle's love of horses. Mrs. Bailey was very old and hadn't ridden for years, but at her home she still kept her favorite horse. He was an ancient gray hunter named Londonderry Eyre. Middle took care of Derry, fed him twice a day, and mucked out his stall. She would have done it for nothing because she wanted to be with horses, but Mrs. Bailey said no. Middle ought to be paid, and she paid Middle well. You want a horse? Mrs. Bailey had said in a brisk voice. Well, don't just ask for one. Open a savings account and save up for it. Middle did, thinking that it would take forever, but it was her only hope. 3 years ago, when Middle first announced at home that she wanted a horse, her father had burst out laughing. He said, You can't even take care of a room. How could you take care of a horse? Her mother didn't think it was funny. Please be reasonable, Middle, she said, little worry lines between her eyebrows. Horses are terribly expensive. With her brother still in college and Laurie starting soon, a horse is impossible. That's one expense we can't have. But when Mrs. Bailey had found several other stable jobs for her, Middle was surprised at how fast her savings account grew. Middle was going to keep her horse at Mrs. Bailey's when she finally got one. Peaches, what do you suppose she wants to show me? She asked the mare as they stopped by the barn. I'll bet it's a horse, but whose? Middle swung to the ground and unhooked her helmet. She pulled it off, shaking her head. The helmet was hot and sweaty, and the wind felt good in her short brown hair. Middle knew she looked better with long hair because she was tall and thin, but long hair was a lot of trouble. Her hair had been long until last month. She had cut it herself the day she was jumping Peaches, and her hair fell down from her helmet into her eyes. She couldn't see where she was going and almost crashed into a fence. As soon as she had put the horse away, she got out the horse clippers and cut her hair. Back home, her mother had walked in the kitchen door, gasped, and collapsed onto the nearest chair. Oh, Middle, how could you? Your lovely brown hair. She rubbed her forehead. Why do you always have to rush off and do something right away without thinking? If you'd only waited, I could have made an appointment for you. Middle shrugged. My hair got in my eyes. Her mother groaned and went to the telephone. The next day, Middle had to go to the hair salon to have her hair evened up. It wasn't the world's greatest haircut, but it was a lot better for riding. Middle arranged the bridle on its hook and slid the saddle onto the rack. Maybe it's a horse that somebody can't ride. When he sees how well I can ride him, he'll give the horse to me. This was Middle's second favorite daydream, after the one of winning at Idlewood. She quickly threw some hay into the manger, turned the mare loose, and gave her a piece of carrot from her jeans pocket. Peaches, I've got to find out what Mrs. Bailey wants to show me. She ran to the bicycle parked under the big eucalyptus tree, hopped on, and scooted down the driveway.